Hi and welcome back to this episode of building R2-D2 from Star Wars. This is the series where I'm building a half-scale R2 unit. This is through a company called Fan Home, and they send out packages and boxes once a month with a couple of episodes and parts. So far we have built the main sensor array that this goes on the side of R2-D2, and we've also started to build his one of his legs and shoulder plates on there. So I'm not going to be doing any building in this episode. Instead, I thought I'd take you through the magazines so you can get a feel of the content that's in them as well. I will be doing this, probably every other episode will be a review of the magazines, and let's go on with it, shall we? So starting off with issue 1 that you get with this kit. In issue 1 you build this little unit here, which is the LED display, and we'll get to those instructions in a second. What I like about the magazines is the attention to detail that they have in them. So if we just open up, the first thing that they want to talk about is the design of R2-D2, which is pretty cool because at the end of the day we're here to build an R2 unit because we're fans of Star Wars and we love the droid. As we go further into the magazine, it explains a little bit of the influences behind R2-D2, and this was something that didn't go unnoticed by Warner Brothers with Silent Running. Silent Running and Warner Brothers, they actually sued 20th Century Fox because they thought that the droids R2-D2 and the droids in Silent Running were too similar, so they sued them, and then 20th Century Fox would later go and counter-sue Warner Brothers for Battlestar Galactica being too much like Star Wars. It also gives a little insight into George Lucas and his ideas. Now, he had a full science fiction feature film, THX 1138, but this wasn't a commercial hit. So he didn't give up though. He didn't give up. He came up with American Graffiti in 1973, and that then kind of helped establish himself as a director. It also gave him the money to finance his dream, and that was of course the Star Wars saga. Then we go into a little bit more detail within the universe of the R2 series of droids, what they do, how they're constructed. A little bit more here and a case study, which is pretty cool. Then we talk a little bit about LEDs and how they influence droids. A little bit of, so they give you a bit of history of the technology behind what we're building as well, which is pretty cool. And I think that's going to be really helpful, particularly if you've got an interest in robotics and you want to learn. Then I think this is going to be quite a good series of magazines to buy just for that content alone. So understanding robotics on there. And then it just, again, gives a little bit more detail between R2-D2. Then we have the instructions for the build, and these were the instructions that we followed in that episode where we built the assembly. Moving on to issue 2, and this is where we've built the shoulder of R2-D2 right here. So those instructions again are at the back of the magazine. And let's have a look inside. So we have the design part of R2-D2, so they're carrying on how they got to the design of the R2 unit. And then we also have, so this goes into a little bit of detail, two pages, a little bit more talking about the droids within the Star Wars universe, and we're now starting to talk about protocol droids and C-3PO. I wonder if they'll ever build a half-scale C-3PO to go with the half-scale R2 unit. And we have a case study of C-3PO and the ICS integrated circuits, which is pretty cool, discussing about microchips and how they've changed and developed over the years and their purpose in computing and robotics. A little bit more about the history behind the robotics and the technology, which is quite interesting to read. And then we have the instructions for building that leg section. So there you go. All of the instructions I think for the build are at the back of the magazine. And that is issue 2. Issue 3, and this is a little bit of a sneak peek of what we'll be building in the next build of R2-D2. So let's have a look at this again. So we've got brilliant, a bit more on the techniques that they used in filming Star Wars. So we're going to get a good comprehensive look at behind the scenes of Star Wars, which is pretty cool, because if you're part of this channel, then movie trivia and that is something that I like to talk about, and hopefully you do too. And we'll find out lots of information about the building of Star Wars as well. R2 series Astromech Droid Part 2. So I can see what they're doing here. They're going to give us a snippet of some facts and figures for the R2 unit, then they're going to go C3PO, then they'll probably go for the other droids as well, which is good because, you know, we've got about 100 episodes of these to get through. Another case study with R2 heading to Dagobah, and again a little bit more printed circuit boards is what we're talking about on the technology side of things. And then what are we building? So this is a sneak peek. We are building we're completing the leg assembly, but we've also got some electronic parts to test as well. So we'll be testing the LED there. And is there any more instructions? No. So that is what we've got coming up in the third part of the build. So hope you've enjoyed this insight into the magazines. I have got more, as you can see. But I'll go through these as and when we build the unit, so you can follow the instructions and go through the magazine briefly with me as well. Hope you've enjoyed this insight into the review of the magazines of the build that we're doing, and don't forget to come back in a week's time where I'll actually be building all the parts that it says here, and we're going to finish off this assembly by the looks of it. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Movie trivia is going out twice a week at the moment while we're building R2-D2. And don't forget you can follow me on the podcast, Sci-Fi Fans, and TikTok, Sci-Fi Fans. I look forward to your company on those other channels. Thanks a lot for your time. Bye.